You're listening to Parents You've Got This, the expert guide to parenthood.
The complete guide to pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood.
This week on the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast, we're talking all about toilet training again, but this time we're talking about toilet training troubleshooting, and we're welcoming back our toilet training guest, Monica Ferrie. Monica Ferrie is from Toilet Training Educators, and she is an expert in how children learn. She is passionate about helping families to have a really smooth transition and supporting children as they learn this valuable skill. Thank you so much, Monica, for joining us today.
It's great to be back. Thank you.
Firstly today, Monica, can we talk about when children are frightened of the toilet? What can we do to help them in this situation?
So fear is a huge issue for some little ones, and we need to deal with the fear before we start insisting on going down the toilet training path. So we want to help our little ones early days with making them familiar with the toilet room. So letting them follow us in, letting them, anything that we can do that says, hey, this room is not like secret parents' business, or it's a room that, it's not a playroom, but it's a room that there's nothing, it doesn't hold any fears. So that familiarisation piece before you start can play a huge role in helping our little ones not to become fearful. But once they do, then we need to manage that fear and eliminate that before we go any further. So what we can start with is having our little ones, allow them to go into the toilet room with a nappy on to do their business. So no pressure that it's about the toilet and about what they may have to do on the toilet. So we're just trying to get them closer in the first instance to the toilet. And we talked about incentives the last time we spoke. This might be a time when you want to introduce incentives and incentivise them for that tiny step of just going into the toilet. Let them put the toilet paper in, let them flush, let them do things that just help them get closer, because the consequences can be those that we really don't want to have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest problem for toilet training is when your little one will be happily do a wee in the toilet, but they won't poo in the toilet. How do you help poo refusal?
That is the number one toilet training. I shouldn't laugh, but it is seriously the number one toilet issue. So any parents out there who thinks they're on their own because their child won't poo in the toilet, them and hundreds of other parents face that issue. So when our little one starts refusing the toilet, if it's fear, we need to deal with that. But if it's something else, and when I say something else, it's constipation is the likely cause. So that toilet refusal could be because of fear, or it could be because of pain. And as you said, Christy, sometimes wee-wise, it doesn't even cross their mind, but poo, if they've had any experience of pain, then they're going to get scared, or they're going to try and stop that pain happening. The way to stop the pain happening is to hold. So, and constipation, the main cause of constipation is actually holding on.
Yeah, so you make a vicious cycle, don't you? Like you're scared to poo because it's going to hurt, and then you do, and then it don't poo and it makes it worse.
Yeah. And that poo just builds and builds and builds and builds, and our little ones get more and more and more uncomfortable, and it gets harder and harder and harder to then get rid of it.
Yeah, and more scared of going to the toilet.
Yeah. Absolutely, that vicious cycle that you mentioned.
And then so often in that case too, they can end up, if you put a nappy on them at night, that's when they do that poo for the day. How do you suggest breaking that? So obviously you want them to poo, you don't want them to be constipated, but you want them to learn the skill as well.
Yeah, so it is really important that we support our little ones to poo, as you said. So kids poo anything between 3 times a day to 3 times a week. So the inconsistency around how often kids poo is something that we as parents just need to take in our stride. You know what your little one is doing. So given that, if they poo in a pattern, then that's the time we want to have a try. If they poo, lots of kids and lots of adults poo half an hour after a warm drink or a warm meal, so that's a good time for a try as well. And it's important to let our little ones have a try, as we talked about last time. So you're right, some kids will hang on for their nighttime nappy. So if your little one is hanging on for their nighttime nappy, then we want to try and separate the preparation for bedtime from the pooing. So we might try and begin with having our dinner earlier, so that if our little one is being triggered by that food in their stomach, that's happening earlier and not in their nighttime nappy, because we really want to keep those separate.
Yeah, and that really helped me. My child had that issue, and then we had a try before bath, and that was like a wind down, relaxing bath 20 minutes after food.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great practice when you're even just getting ready to toilet train. Sit your little one on before a bath when they're in the nude. They bounce on, bounce off.
Yeah, and lots of fluids, and that was another really great tip. Monica gave it to us about giving them fluid that they might not think about, icy poles or something along those lines. So they're getting fluid in, but it's not necessarily, a chore to get it in.
Fluid's so important too for poo, because, and we don't often put that together. We think about fluid with but fluid water is hugely important because it helps keep the poo soft.
Yes.
We often feed our kids great diets with loads of fibre, lots of veggies, lots of fruit, but if we don't have the amount of fluid to keep the poo soft, the more fibre, the harder and more bulky the poos. So we need those two things together.
What about wiping bottoms? I know my children, I don't know why, but always screaming out, wipe my bottom from a really age, and you're sort of thinking you should know how to wipe it yourself now, but I guess it's probably that thing that they haven't been modelled it by us on how to do it. What are your suggestions, and is it different for boys and girls?
It's not different for boys and girls. It's more about the length of their arms, actually.
Oh, yes, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
So it would be very rare, although as we also talked about last time, kids can be later when they're toilet training. So while it's much easier earlier, a 3.5-year-old can probably reach to wipe their bottom. 3.5, 4-year-old, which we are hearing about some kids beginning at that stage, they can probably reach. Younger than that, it's probably more a physical thing that they actually can't reach yet. Yes. So it's one of the things that we have to, as a parent, keep in mind. We're going to have to teach them how to do that. And one of the best ways to teach them how to do that is just progressively. So you wipe their bottom for a start, clean up most of the mess, and then let them finish off. When they can reach, of course. Let them finish off, drop it in the toilet, check the toilet paper, is it clean? Yes, it is, right, okay. And then as they get used to that and good at that, then let them start, and then you finish off.
Yeah, and I found that with one of my little ones when they were 3. I was like, you should sort of be able to wipe your bottom by now, going to kinder. And then I worked out it was actually because they couldn't touch the floor. So we'd gotten rid of the seat, but to wipe, so then I got a shoe box, and that was the poo box for a long time, and got out the poo box so he could plant his feet on the ground so he could actually reach to wipe his bottom. But I just hadn't thought about that until when I went in. I was like, oh, actually, why are you standing up to wipe your bottom? Oh, it is actually really hard. Yeah,
that's a great idea.
What about wetting, Monica? If a child has been dry and then starts having accidents again, what should parents do in that situation?
So regression, if a child has been doing really well and then all of a sudden starts going backwards, something's going on. There is a reason for that. So a child regresses because we need to, when we have learned something, we need to consciously think about it. So as we're learning, we are consciously thinking about, I do this and then I do that and then I do this and then I do that. And then it becomes automatic for us. So our brain follows a process. So when you drive, you don't think about traffic lights or lines on the road or other cars. It feels like you naturally just take them into account as you drive. Same as when you go to the toilet. For your little one, they need to think about going to the toilet. They need to, oh, okay, I need to go to the toilet. Oh, I need to find a toilet. Oh, I need to consciously think about the process. If all of us only have certain number of brain spaces to be able to think consciously. So if your little one's brain spaces are all full, they actually have no space to recognise that message that says, oh, my bladder's full, I need to do something about it. So they literally don't understand they need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, and that happens, I think, when they go to school often. They might never have wet and then suddenly they wet. But number one, their routines change. Number two, they're really tired and like what you're saying, they can only think of one thing at a time.
Yeah. So little ones can probably hang on to about 5 to 7 things. But if you've moved into a new house, or if you've got a new baby, or the child's been ill, or like you said, they've got a new school or a new kinder, things that are breaking into their routine, they're having to think about like where their stuff is, or who is this new person, or as well as those things they consciously think about anyway, where their toys are, who's got which toy, all of those things that kids have on their minds. So they need us to be understanding of that. And they might need us for a little while to start taking them to the toilet again. Every couple of hours, it's time for a try. They will go back to the way they were. They will get past whatever it is that they're needing to think about.
And I think that's too when they're really little, they're so in the moment, aren't they? So if they're playing with the truck or whatnot, they can't necessarily think, I want to get up and go to the toilet. So I love your advice around, linking it to a part of a routine. So, we go for a wee before we have our lunch or before bath or whatnot. So that way they don't have to think about it, becomes automated.
Yeah, so that actually puts a whole lot of things into one conscious thought. Oh, it's bath time, and the process to bath time is, I have to go to the toilet. And as well as take my clothes off, as well as do this, but it's one conscious thought. Yeah. So routine, really does help.
So kids are rarely, Monica, they're not really doing it on purpose, are they? You know how sometimes some parents saying they're weeing all the time just to get my attention. Do you think children do that, or maybe they do?
I don't think any child wees all the time to get attention. I think kids that wee all the time are much, 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 much more likely to have a physical problem, especially if they've been perfectly fine. So if your little one starts weeing all the time, then it's really important to get them checked out by a GP. We want to make sure they don't have a urinary tract infection, which would be really rare in a little one.
Yeah.
It's much more likely that they've got an irritable bladder. And if they've got an irritable bladder, that needs our assistance anyway. But we want to find out. Now, a GP probably will let you know that it's most likely a toilet training problem. It isn't. So it's important if your instincts say, hey, I don't think this is a toilet training problem, ask for a referral to a continence paediatrician. They deal with issues like this all the time. Under 4, an irritable bladder may well resolve itself quite quickly. So if your little one isn't overly stressed about putting nappies on for a little while because they've just got this little issue that you can deal with together, we'll put the nappies back on and it will likely resolve itself. No one knows why it starts. And no one knows why it automatically or often spontaneously resolves.
Yeah. And it's good to get it checked, isn't it, by a GP? Because once my daughter did end up with a bladder infection. It was because they were bleaching the toilets at childcare, and she sat down on like a bleached toilet and she got an infection. So, but if I hadn't gone to the GP to work that out, she would have just been wetting all the time, and we wouldn't have realised why. So it's always good to consult your healthcare professional to find out what's right for your circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about undies, Monica? Some children just don't like the feel of them. They can be itchy, they can be scratchy, they feel different to nappies. What would your recommendation be for parents who might have a little one that really doesn't want to wear undies?
So often with our little ones, we're going to try and take like just small steps. Instead of going to the end outcome right from the start, we want them in undies, then it can be much easier to let's start taking small steps. So lots of little ones who don't like undies will let you put undies over the top. So they'll have close to their skin what they feel comfortable with, and undies over the top, and let them just get used to that. And then it's about a progression. So can we get the undies on underneath the nappies, and can we move in that way, and reward, incentivize okay, well, let's try this first, and then try that, and incentivize that with those little things, the Smarties and the stickers and so on.
So my last question, Monica, you touched on this in our previous episode about toilet training, but nighttime training. So you realise, previously you've talked about it being a genetic disposition when your child's ready to be toilet trained, but what if they're over the recommended age of nighttime wetting? What do you do about nighttime wetting if they're over that age?
So if a little one's over 6, which is the age that a children's hospital, for example, may start to consider that some kind of help is required, but not till over 6. And in fact, some hospitals now, because there are so many kids, some hospitals now say 7.
Yes.
So that's when you might reach out for some assistance. There are organisations who can help, and what they will seek to do is they will seek to get that hormone that we discussed last time working. So it's not about, okay, how do we teach the little one to use the bed or to not wet the bed? It's about how do we actually trigger that hormone so it starts working. Now, one conversation you might want to have with partners may want to have is when they stopped wetting the bed.
Yeah.
Because we talked last time about how this is a genetic predisposition. So if the parents wet the bed until they were 10 years old, then they're the genes that the little one is carrying. So depending on the level of comfort of a child, they might hit 6 and you think this is really distressing for them, we need to do something about it.
Well, it can be hard with camp and overnight sleepovers and things like that. It can be embarrassing to have a pull-up on or wet the bed at a friend's house.
And there will be like 3 or 4 kids in their class who wet the bed as well.
Absolutely.
At least.
That's why when you go on camp, it's like tick the box. Is your kid a nighttime wetter? It's normal.
Yeah.
Pack extra.
Yeah.
Yes. Advice. It's not don't come, it's just bring more.
And actually,
let us know discreetly.
That's a hugely important thing. If you know that your kid may have an accident at school or may have an accident, we talked about automation. If kids haven't, they might need reminders. So if your child needs a reminder and they're going to have an accident at school or they're going on camp and help them to understand how they can help themselves. That's a hugely important thing that parents can do for themselves, can do for their child. Like, it's not a big deal. We'll pack you extra stuff. We'll put all these things in so that you can take care of the things you need to do. But at home, you can get professional help. They'll use a bed
Wetting alarm?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't even say what that is. A bell and pad. Bell and pad.
Yes.
They'll use a bell and pad alarm, put it on the bed, and what that does is it wakes the child the second that there is the size of a 10-cent coin of wee that hits the trigger. And the key that bell and pad alarm is seeking to do is to get the brain to say, my bladder is screaming, I'm supposed to do something so I don't wake up here. So that works in about 95% of cases.
Yeah.
So in a 6-week period, a little one can go from wetting the bed every night to not wetting the bed at all. But some of us just need some help to get that started.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. That's why you offer the most incredible service where you've got fact sheets and incredible resources on the Toilet Training Educator site where parents can come and see some of those common problems, but you also have appointments so parents can book in to see what's happening with their own child and make a tailored specific plan for them. And you've got an incredible book too, so we recommend everyone reads that. Well, thank you, Monica, so much for coming on the Expert Guide to Parenthood today. You've been listening to the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast, and never forget, parents, you've got this.
Join a Parents You've Got This masterclass today to be prepared, excited and educated for pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. Visit www.parentsyouvegotthis.com.au and sign up for a masterclass today.